The laughter stopped being funny when Patricia kept smiling. Three men had cornered her wheelchair near the VA Medical Center entrance, making jokes about her missing legs and the small American flag pin on her jacket. They expected tears, anger, or at least some reaction that would feed their cruel entertainment. Instead, Patricia Miller sat perfectly still in her chair, hands folded calmly in her lap, watching them with the kind of steady gaze that made people uncomfortable. Her gray hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and despite their increasingly aggressive taunts about disabled veterans being a burden on society, she never looked away from their faces. The tallest thug stepped closer, his voice getting louder as he mocked her flag pin. His friends joined in, making exaggerated limping motions and fake crying sounds. Other people in the parking lot hurried past, avoiding eye contact, unwilling to get involved in what looked like three young men picking on a helpless older woman. But Patricia was not helpless, and she was certainly not afraid. Her calm composure seemed to irritate them more than any angry response would have. She had seen worse than these three bullies, face down enemies they could not imagine, and survive battles that would have broken most people. The automatic doors of the VA center whooshed open behind her as she maintained her quiet dignity, knowing that sometimes the best response to ignorance was simply to wait and let others reveal exactly who they really were. 8 men in naval uniforms emerged from the parking lot, their synchronized movements and alert postures immediately shifting the atmosphere around the VA center entrance. The thugs were still laughing at Patricia when the lead SEAL stepped forward, his expression hard as granite. The tallest bully opened his mouth to make another joke, but the words died in his throat as all 8 SEALs moved into a perfect formation. The lead officer, a commander with weathered hands and sharp eyes, walked directly to Patricia's wheelchair and came to attention. His salute was crisp, respectful, and absolutely unmistakable in its military precision. "Colonel Patricia Miller," he said in a voice that carried across the entire parking lot. "It is an honor to see you again, ma'am." The 3 thugs stood frozen, their cruel laughter replaced by dawning horror as they realized what they had just witnessed. The other 7 SEALs maintained their respectful positions, creating a protective semicircle around Patricia's wheelchair. Patricia returned the salute with a slight nod, her calm smile never wavering. "Commander Torres," she replied quietly, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had earned every bit of respect being shown to her. The bullies looked at each other with growing panic, finally understanding that they had not been tormenting some helpless disabled woman, but rather a decorated military officer whose service record commanded the immediate respect of active-duty Navy SEALs. Commander Torres turned his attention to the 3 thugs, his voice cutting through the air like steel. "You gentlemen have been harassing Colonel Miller, a recipient of the Silver Star, Bronze Star, and Purple Heart. She commanded a forward operating base in Afghanistan and saved over 200 Marines during a siege that lasted 18 hours. The tallest thug's face had gone completely white. His friends backed away, suddenly finding the ground very interesting to stare at. Other veterans and visitors who had been hurrying past now stopped to witness what was unfolding. Patricia remained composed in her wheelchair, watching the scene with the same steady gaze she had maintained throughout the harassment. She had learned long ago that respect earned through service spoke louder than any words she could offer in her own defense. The colonel lost her legs to an IED while evacuating wounded soldiers. Torres continued, his voice growing harder with each word. She carried 3 wounded men to safety before the medics could reach her position. The flag pin you were mocking represents service to a country that owes her more than you could ever understand. One of the thugs tried to stammer an apology, but Torres held up his hand. The damage was already done, and everyone within hearing distance now knew exactly who Patricia Miller was and what she had sacrificed for their freedom. Patricia finally spoke, her voice calm and measured. "Gentlemen," she said to the thugs, "I hope you learned something today about making assumptions." Word of the incident spread through the VA center like wildfire. Staff members who had witnessed the confrontation were already sharing the story with colleagues inside, and Patricia could see the change in how people looked at her as she wheeled through the corridors. The three thugs had disappeared quickly after Torres finished explaining her service record, but their humiliation had served a larger purpose. Veterans throughout the facility were now approaching Patricia with newfound respect, many sharing their own stories of being underestimated or dismissed. Torres and his team remained nearby, ostensibly there for their own appointments, but clearly maintaining a protective presence. Patricia appreciated their concern, though she had handled far worse situations than three ignorant bullies. The afternoon was proceeding normally until the emergency alarm began blaring through the VA center. Code Silver echoed over the intercom system, indicating an armed individual somewhere in the building. Staff members immediately began implementing lockdown procedures, while security personnel rushed to coordinate their response. Patricia noticed Torres and his SEALs instantly shift into tactical mode, their relaxed postures replaced by the alert readiness of combat veterans. The commander approached her wheelchair again, but this time his expression carried a different kind of urgency. "Colonel Miller," he said quietly, "we may need your expertise. The security office is asking if anyone has experience with hostage negotiation and tactical crisis management." The situation escalated rapidly when reports came through the security radio that a disturbed veteran had barricaded himself in the psychiatric wing with two counselors. Patricia listened intently as fragments of information filtered through the chaos around them. Local police were 20 minutes away, and the facility security team was trained for medical emergencies, not armed standoffs. The individual had military training and was reportedly experiencing a severe PTSD episode, making standard law enforcement tactics potentially dangerous for everyone involved. Patricia wheeled herself toward the security office, with Torres and his team following closely. The head of security, a nervous man named Jackson, looked relieved when he saw the SEALs but seemed uncertain about Patricia's presence. Commander Torres stepped forward to make introductions. Colonel Miller specialized in crisis negotiation during her deployment. Jackson. She successfully de-escalated 14 hostile situations without a single casualty. Patricia could see the doubt in Jackson's eyes as he glanced at her wheelchair, clearly struggling between desperation for expert help and uncertainty about her current capabilities. The radio crackled again with updates that the situation was deteriorating and the disturbed veteran was becoming increasingly agitated. She looked directly at Jackson with the same steady gaze that had unsettled the thugs earlier. "I may be in a wheelchair," she said calmly, "but my mind and my voice work perfectly fine. That man needs someone who understands what he is going through." Jackson's radio erupted with frantic voices reporting that the barricaded veteran had fired a warning shot and was demanding to speak with someone who understood combat trauma. The two counselors trapped with him were trained in therapy, not crisis negotiation under armed duress. Patricia positioned her wheelchair where she could see the security monitors showing the psychiatric wing hallway. The disturbed veteran, a young man named Danny Rodriguez, according to his file, was visible through a partially open door, pacing frantically while clutching his service pistol. Torres moved beside her chair, his voice low and urgent. "Colonel, what do you need from us to make this work?" Patricia studied the monitor feeds, her tactical mind automatically assessing angles, escape routes, and potential complications. She had handled similar situations in Afghanistan when fellow soldiers broke under the pressure of repeated deployments and impossible circumstances. Jackson finally made his decision, desperation overriding his doubts about her physical limitations. "Colonel Miller," he said formally, "I am requesting your assistance in resolving this crisis. You have tactical command of the negotiation." Patricia nodded once, accepting the responsibility with the same calm authority she had shown throughout the day. "Give me a secure phone line to that room," she instructed, "and clear everyone except essential personnel from the corridor. This young man needs to know he is talking to someone who has walked the same path he is walking now." The transformation was immediate as Patricia shifted into command mode, her voice carrying decades of leadership experience. Patricia's voice remained steady and calm as the phone connected to the barricaded room. "Danny," she said without preamble, "this is Colonel Patricia Miller. I lost my legs to an IED in Kandahar, and I know exactly what you're feeling right now." The response came immediately, Danny's voice cracking with desperation. "They don't understand what it is like over there. These counselors keep talking about coping mechanisms, but they have never heard mortars landing 50 feet away every night for 6 months." "I have," Patricia replied simply. "I commanded Forward Operating Base Phoenix during the siege of 2018. 18 hours of continuous bombardment, and we lost good people that day. The nightmares don't stop just because you come home." Through the security monitor, she could see Danny's pacing slow slightly. His grip on the pistol remained tight, but his posture showed he was listening rather than just reacting. Torres and his SEALs maintained their positions, ready to act if Patricia's negotiation failed. Patricia continued, her voice carrying the authority of shared experience. "The difference between you and me, Danny, is that I found a way to turn that pain into purpose. Those counselors you are holding, they're trying to help other veterans like us. By threatening them, you're hurting the very people who dedicate their lives to understanding our struggles." She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the crucial message that could save everyone in that room. Danny's voice came through the phone, shaking with barely controlled emotion. "Colonel, how do you live with seeing your friends die? How do you wake up every morning knowing you survived when better people didn't make it home?" Patricia closed her eyes briefly, drawing on memories she rarely shared with anyone. "Sergeant Martinez was 19 years old when the mortar round took him. Danny. He died trying to carry ammunition to my position during the siege. I see his face every single day." The security monitor showed Danny lowering his weapon slightly, his attention completely focused on Patricia's words. The two counselors remained pressed against the far wall, but their terror was giving way to hope as they listened to the conversation. "But Martinez didn't die, so I could waste the life he helped save," Patricia continued, her voice growing stronger. "He died believing that his sacrifice meant something, that the people he protected would go on to make a difference. When I wake up screaming from nightmares, I remember that my survival has a purpose." Torres watched the monitor intently as Danny set his pistol on a nearby desk, though he remained within reach of it. Patricia immediately recognized the tactical significance of this gesture and adjusted her approach accordingly. "Danny," she said gently, "those counselors in the room with you have helped dozens of veterans find their way back from the darkness. They are not your enemy. The real enemy is the voice in your head telling you that your pain doesn't matter." The breakthrough came when Danny's voice cracked completely. "Colonel, I can't sleep anymore. Every time I close my eyes, I see the convoy explosion. My buddy Thompson was sitting right next to me, and then he was just gone." Patricia leaned forward in her wheelchair, her voice carrying absolute conviction. "Danny, Thompson's death was not your fault, and your survival was not a mistake. You were meant to come home, and you were meant to get help." Through the monitor, everyone watched as Danny stepped away from the pistol entirely, his shoulders shaking as years of suppressed grief finally broke through. One of the counselors, a woman named Dr. Sarah Chun, slowly stood up and began talking softly to him. Patricia coordinated the final phase with military precision. "Torres, have your men ready at the door, but keep them back. Jackson, get medical personnel standing by. Danny needs immediate psychiatric evaluation, not handcuffs." 10 minutes later, Danny Rodriguez walked out of the room with his hands raised, tears streaming down his face, but no longer carrying a weapon. Dr. Chun and her colleague followed safely behind him, both shaken but unharmed. Torres approached Patricia's wheelchair as the crisis officially ended. "Colonel," he said with genuine admiration, "that was masterful work. You saved 3 lives today using nothing but your voice and your experience." Patricia smiled quietly as she watched Danny being led away by medical personnel who would help him rather than arrest him. "Sometimes," she replied, "the most important battles are fought with words instead of weapons." News of Patricia's successful negotiations spread through the VA center within hours, but the story that emerged was far more powerful than simple crisis resolution. Staff members who had witnessed her calm command during the hostage situation were sharing details with colleagues, veterans, and visitors throughout the facility. Dr. Chun personally sought out Patricia to express her gratitude. "Colonel Miller," she said, approaching the wheelchair with obvious respect, "you didn't just save our lives today. The way you connected with Danny, the understanding you showed him, that was something no textbook could have taught me." Patricia accepted the thanks graciously, but she could see the transformation happening around her was much larger than one successful negotiation. Veterans who had previously walked past her with polite nods were now stopping to shake her hand and share their own stories of struggle and recovery. Jackson, the head of security, approached with a formal recommendation letter already drafted. "Colonel," he said, "I am submitting a request to have you serve as our consulting expert for veteran crisis situations. What you did today proved that experience matters more than physical ability." Torres and his SEALs had delayed their departure to witness the recognition Patricia was receiving. The commander watched with satisfaction as the same facility where she had been mocked hours earlier now treated her with the respect and admiration her service had always deserved. The most significant change was visible in the eyes of everyone who looked at Patricia now. She was no longer seen as a disabled veteran in a wheelchair, but as a proven leader whose expertise could save lives. The transformation was complete when the three thugs returned to the VA center the following morning. They approached Patricia's wheelchair hesitantly, their earlier arrogance replaced by genuine shame and something approaching awe. The tallest one, who had led the harassment, spoke first. "Colonel Miller, we came back to apologize properly. What we did yesterday was inexcusable, and after hearing about how you saved those people, we realized we were attacking a genuine hero." Patricia studied their faces, seeing real remorse rather than the fake politeness people sometimes offered when caught in their prejudices. She had learned to distinguish between authentic regret and mere embarrassment at being exposed. "We want to do something to make this right," the second thug added. "We talked about it all night, and we want to volunteer here at the VA center. Maybe we can learn something about respect and service from people like you." Torres, who had stayed nearby throughout the morning, watched the interaction with interest. This kind of transformation was rare, but Patricia's combination of dignity under attack and demonstrated excellence had created a teaching moment these young men would never forget. Patricia considered their offer carefully before responding. "Volunteering here would be meaningful," she said finally, "but only if you understand that every veteran you meet has earned your respect through their service. My wheelchair doesn't define my capabilities, and their visible or invisible wounds don't define theirs." The three men nodded solemnly, finally understanding the lesson that yesterday's events had been designed to teach. 6 months later, Patricia Miller had become a legend at the VA Medical Center. Her official title was Crisis Intervention Specialist, but everyone knew her simply as the colonel who could talk anyone through their darkest moments. Danny Rodriguez had returned to thank her personally after completing his treatment program. "Colonel," he said, standing straight and clear-eyed, "you gave me back my life that day. I am working with other veterans now, helping them find their way through the same darkness you helped me escape." The three former thugs had indeed become regular volunteers, and their transformation was evident to everyone who knew their story. They worked in the rehabilitation wing, helping disabled veterans with daily tasks while learning firsthand about the courage required to rebuild a life after devastating injuries. Torres and his SEAL team made monthly visits to consult with Patricia on veteran outreach programs. Her reputation had spread beyond the local facility, and she was now training crisis negotiators at military installations across the country. Patricia wheeled through the same entrance where she had once been mocked, now greeted with genuine respect and admiration from everyone she encountered. Her wheelchair had never been a limitation, only other people's narrow understanding of what strength and capability actually looked like. The flag pin on her jacket still caught the light as she moved through the corridors, but now everyone who saw it understood exactly what it represented and why it deserved their honor. Have you ever witnessed someone overcome incredible challenges through determination and inner strength? Share your story about resilience in the comments below.